The world ended not with a bang, but with a whisper. Specifically, the crackle of a dead comms line and the sickening hiss of compressed air as the bullet tore through the reinforced glass of the extraction chopper, just inches from Elias Thorne's temple. One moment, he was scanning the hostile city below, the data chip burning a hole in his vest. A fragile victory in a war no one knew they were fighting. The next, the pilot's head exploded in a crimson mist, splattering the cockpit screen with gore and fragments of bone. No warning. No enemy fire registered on their heat signatures. Just the sickening thud of the helicopter lurching violently, its engine screaming a death rattle as it spiraled out of control towards the unforgiving concrete landscape. Elias didn't scream. He didn't even flinch. His training kicked in, an icy calm overriding the primal terror. The door gunner, Anya, was already dead, slumped over her weapon, eyes wide and unseeing. This wasn't an ambush from below. This was surgical, precision, and too close, internal. The realization hit him harder than the impact he knew was coming. Someone on his team, someone he'd bled beside, trusted with his life. They wanted him and everything he carried, gone. The city rushed up to meet them, a brutal maw preparing to swallow their secrets. The ground was just seconds away, a blur of impending doom. No escape, no backup, just the roaring wind, the dying chopper, and the chilling certainty of betrayal carving a name into his mind. Silas. The city barely stirred, a sleeping giant beneath the oppressive gray of pre-dawn. But high above, across a jagged urban landscape of steel and concrete, one man was very much awake, a dark phantom against the nascent light. Jax, a silhouette carved from shadow and resolve, became a blur of motion. Each leap across the rain-slicked chasms between industrial rooftops was a calculated risk, a breath-held gamble against gravity and the relentless pursuit. Suppressive fire, the harsh crack of high-caliber rounds, chewed at the edge of his heels, chipping concrete and sending shrapnel whistling past. He scaled a sheer wall with impossible grace, his fingers finding purchase where none existed, the icy wind a raw whisper of danger. This wasn't merely survival. It was a desperate dance with death, a testament to a life lived perpetually on the edge, a ghost barely ahead of the coming storm. The relentless hunt defined him, but something deeper, more sacred, drove him. Having shed his pursuers like a second skin, Jax found his own, albeit temporary, sanctuary. High above the sleeping world, perched on a precarious ledge, he was invisible, an observer in the quiet theater of dawn. His worn fingers, still trembling from the adrenaline, meticulously retrieved a pair of old binoculars. Through their scratched lenses, his world narrowed to a single luminous window on a quiet suburban street below. There, bathed in the soft, unwavering glow of a unicorn nightlight, lay Lily, his daughter. Her small form, curled in innocent slumber, was a beacon in his desolate existence. The sheer, terrifying contrast between his brutal reality and her peaceful innocence was a crushing weight, a silent promise whispered on the wind. This was his burden, his enduring reason, his unbreakable vow. A fragile hope he guarded with a hidden blade and a silent prayer. The first tendrils of orange bled into the horizon, a fiery promise of a new day. For others, a fresh start. For Jax, merely the end of another lonely, dangerous vigil. With a deep, shuddering breath, he reluctantly lowered the binoculars, the image of Lily's sleeping face searing itself into his memory. He didn't look back at his own dangerous world. Instead, his gaze lingered, etched with profound sorrow, on the small house below. A quiet suburban home, a life he couldn't touch, a family he couldn't openly protect. It was a silent, agonizing farewell until the next rotation of shadows. The morning light, usually a symbol of hope, felt like a cruel barrier. His mission, his curse, called him back to the darkness. With a final, lingering look of painful acceptance, he dissolved into the intricate labyrinth of shadows, leaving only the memory of a ghost in the dawn. Later, the city thrummed with the mundane chaos of mid-morning, a stark contrast to the pre-dawn violence. Jax, now blending seamlessly into the human tide, met Mara, his grizzled handler, in the anonymous hum of a downtown coffee shop. Their conversation was a masterclass in unspoken tension, conducted through veiled glances and coded gestures over lukewarm coffee. Mara, her face a roadmap of hard-won experience and weary cynicism, slid a burner phone across the table, its screen dark and unrevealing. A coded message followed, delivered in hushed, urgent tones. But it was her eyes that spoke volumes, betraying a fear deeper than any words could convey. "The veil," she warned, her voice barely a whisper, "is stirring again, and this time it feels different. Closer." The words hung heavy in the air, an invisible shroud of dread settling over them, promising a storm of unseen forces and a renewed, terrifying threat. Back in the seemingly safe suburban haven, an unsettling tremor ran through Anna, Lily's mother. A subtle shift in the air, a prickle on the back of her neck that spoke of old, buried fears resurfacing. It began innocuously enough, a misplaced item on Lily's windowsill. A small, smooth river stone, not from their garden, alien to their carefully curated world. Its presence was a tiny anomaly, yet it lodged itself in Anna's mind, a quiet discord in the everyday rhythm of their lives. She traced its cool surface, a shiver running down her spine. The feeling was insidious, a premonition of disruption, a ghost of a touch that suggested an unseen presence, a breach in their perceived security. It was the same unsettling sensation she'd felt years ago, a silent alarm bell ringing in the quiet corners of her mind, hinting that the past was not as buried as she wished. The fragile peace of the morning shattered with a sudden, piercing cry. Lily woke abruptly from a nightmare, her small body trembling uncontrollably, her face pale and tear-streaked. Anna rushed to her side, her heart pounding with a familiar, primal fear. Lily, her voice barely a whisper, described shadowy figures in her room, a pervasive feeling of coldness, a sense of being watched even in her sleep. She spoke of shapes that lurked just beyond the reach of her nightlight, of an icy presence that stole her warmth. Anna held her tight, murmuring reassurances, but the words felt hollow. A shiver, cold and unwelcome, ran down her own spine. The innocence of a child's nightmare felt too real, too vivid, too much like an echo of the insidious danger that was beginning to close in around them, a chilling premonition of the threat the veil truly represented. In the labyrinthine heart of corporate power, Jax moved with the practiced ease of a predator. Under the guise of an innocuous IT technician, he infiltrated a heavily secured data center, a cold, gleaming monument to information. The retrieval job, ostensibly for a tech mogul, was merely a cover, a high-stakes distraction. His true objective lay deeper, sifting through layers of encrypted data, searching for any digital whisper, any spectral trace of the veil within the company's vast network. Each keystroke was a gamble, each bypass of a security protocol a roll of the dice. Lasers crisscrossed the air, cameras swiveled with inhuman precision, and the hum of servers was a constant, nerve-wracking drone. He was a digital ghost in a fortress of firewalls, putting himself in extreme, calculated danger, driven by a desperate need to understand the enemy that threatened his world and his daughter's fragile peace. A new shadow fell upon the city, elegant and deadly. The Ghost, an operative whose reputation preceded her in whispered legends, arrived with the silent efficiency of a surgical strike. Impeccably dressed, her demeanor was chillingly precise, every movement economical, every glance calculating. She was not a brute force. She was a scalpel, a master of unseen manipulation. From a hidden urban sanctuary, she orchestrated a sophisticated surveillance network, a web of digital eyes and ears spreading across the unsuspecting city. Her primary focus, however, was disturbingly clear: Anna and Lily's home. The innocent suburban house, once a beacon of peace, now lay under her relentless, cold gaze. The Ghost was not merely stirring the veil. She was its harbinger, its most terrifying instrument, bringing the danger directly to the doorstep of the very sanctuary Jax fought to protect. The world of Anna and Lily became a meticulously observed theater for the Ghost. From her anonymous perch, a labyrinth of surveillance technology unfurled, weaving an invisible net around their lives. Every mundane routine, every casual stroll, every whispered conversation within the perceived safety of their home was captured, dissected, and analyzed. Advanced parabolic microphones, barely visible pinhole cameras disguised as everyday objects, and sophisticated thermal imaging systems painted a chillingly intimate portrait of their existence. The ghost moved with silent efficiency, a phantom limb of the veil, her fingers dancing across keyboards, compiling detailed reports. These encrypted packets, filled with the granular details of 2 unsuspecting lives, were dispatched directly into the unseen, authoritative digital maw of Director Thorne, the unseen architect of their impending doom. During his nightly vigil, a ritual born of paranoia and necessity, Jax felt a subtle shift in the air, a discordant note in the symphony of suburban peace. His gaze, accustomed to dissecting every shadow, every glint of light, picked up on anomalies. The hedge by the old property, trimmed with an unnatural precision. A bird feeder, subtly askew, as if a hand other than Anna's had adjusted it. Then, the glint of an unfamiliar dark sedan, parked a block down, too pristine for this quiet street, too patient. His finely honed instincts, sharpened by a lifetime of evasion and violence, screamed. This wasn't just coincidence. This was a signature. His sanctuary, the fragile illusion of safety he'd built around Anna and Lily, was not merely observed. It was compromised. Driven by the icy grip of his premonition, Jax moved like a ghost through the encroaching dusk, skirting the perimeter of his old home. Every shadow was an ally, every gust of wind a cover for his silent movements. He reached Lily's window, a familiar anchor in his memory, his senses stretched taut, straining against the silence. And then he saw it. Nestled at the base of the window frame, beside a patch of hydrangeas, lay a second smooth, gray stone, identical to the one he'd found weeks ago, a silent, insidious marker. The blood ran cold in his veins. This wasn't a random act. It was a deliberate signature. The Veil wasn't just watching. They were claiming territory. Their insidious mark, a harbinger of doom, was now undeniably etched onto his family's doorstep. A sudden, violent flash. The world dissolved into the chaotic echoes of a night that had nearly claimed him. Jax, younger, but no less lethal, was bleeding, the sharp tang of copper filling his mouth. Muzzle flashes erupted around him, painting his desperate struggle in strobing light. Veil operatives, faceless in their tactical gear, closed in like a pack of wolves. He clutched a crucial, encrypted file, its contents a death sentence if it fell into the wrong hands. The decision, born of a primal need to protect, was instantaneous and brutal. Fake his death. Disappear. Become a ghost to save his loved ones from becoming collateral damage in a war that wasn't theirs. The explosion ripped through the air, a cleansing fire erasing his past, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would forever remain. Back in the sterile, blue-lit cocoon of his hidden lair, Jax's fingers flew across the holographic interfaces, a frantic dance against time. The data streams from the corporate center pulsed with raw information, while Mara's fragmented, coded message screamed a silent warning. Piece by piece, the digital mosaic of the Veil's insidious operations clicked into place. They weren't just hunting him. They had been systematically eliminating every loose end connected to his past, every whisper of his existence. The names, the dates, the locations scrolled across his multiple screens, a chilling ledger of executions. Then, the truth, cold and undeniable, sucker punched him. Anna and Lily. Their names, highlighted in a stark, damning red, were next on the Veil's extermination list. The air in his sanctuary grew thin with the weight of impending doom. Dusk bled into night as Jax, disguised in the anonymous cloak of a delivery driver, attempted a reconnaissance of his old neighborhood. Every shadow seemed to stretch and shift. Every distant car headlight felt like a probing eye. Then, an almost imperceptible ripple in the air. A fleeting glint of reflection in a darkened shop window. Presence. He felt the ghost before he saw any undeniable proof, a primal echo of recognition between predator and predator. The cat-and-mouse game had begun. Through the labyrinthine alleys and darkening streets, they stalked each other, two unseen specters in a world oblivious to their deadly ballet. The tension was a palpable current, an unspoken challenge passing between them, a silent promise of the inevitable confrontation that awaited. The strange occurrences had escalated, whispering doubts into Anna's heart. Lily's nightmares, once fleeting, now clung to her like a shroud, filled with dark figures and whispered threats. Disquieted, Anna compulsively searched, a desperate, irrational need for answers driving her. Deep within the recesses of an old memory box, hidden beneath faded photographs, she found it. A burner phone Jax had kept, a relic from a life she thought long buried. With trembling fingers, she powered it on, a forgotten voicemail notification blinking like a mournful beacon. Jax's voice, raspy and choked with emotion from years ago, filled the quiet room. "I love you. Goodbye." The words, a phantom touch from a ghost, broke her. The weight of his sacrifice, the crushing loneliness, the chilling realization of her haunted reality, all cascaded over her in a wave of raw, heart-wrenching grief. Time had become an enemy, relentlessly ticking down to the inevitable. Jax, fueled by a cold, desperate resolve, devised a perilous plan. At his console, bathed in the frantic glow of algorithms, he crafted a sophisticated digital snare. He wove together fragments of real intelligence with meticulously fabricated data, creating a fake intelligence package, a poison chalice designed to look like a critical veil asset. Embedded within its layers was a powerful, self-propagating virus, a digital weapon poised to cripple any system it touched. With a grim finality, he leaked it onto the dark web, a tantalizing beacon in the digital void. The objective was clear: lure the veil away from Anna and Lily, draw their monstrous attention to this new, irresistible target, and buy his family the precious time they desperately needed. From the sterile silence of his command center, Director Thorne watched the digital tendrils of the dark web surge, a sudden, violent bloom of activity. His face, etched with the cold precision of a surgeon, betrayed no emotion as he processed the anomaly. A calculated risk, a deliberate leak, had been deployed into the digital abyss, a single thread designed to snag a ghost. "The veil traces the source," he commanded, his voice a low, chilling whisper that promised retribution. "Any potential trap is an acceptable consequence. We will flush him out." He knew the stakes, he understood the danger, but in his world of shadows and algorithms, human lives were merely variables in a much larger equation. Pawns moved without a flicker of remorse. The bait had worked perfectly, fatally. A single flicker, a momentary digital echo, and the veil was upon him, a pack of hungry wolves descending. Jax's location, once a phantom in the urban labyrinth, was now compromised, broadcast to every predator in Thorne's employ. The city became a blur of frantic motion, the roar of engines echoing his own pounding heart. He was a whisper caught in a gale, weaving through gridlock traffic, dodging the relentless headlights of multiple pursuing vehicles, the metallic glint of armed motorcyclists closing in. Every street became a deadly gauntlet, every alley a potential dead end. He pushed himself, and his stolen vehicle, to the absolute edge, a desperate high-speed ballet against overwhelming odds. His life hanging precariously on every turn, every split-second decision. He burst through the door of the safe house, gasping, battered, only to find the sanctuary was a meticulously sprung trap. The veil was already there, a silent, lethal welcome committee. The air instantly thickened with the smell of stale dust and impending violence. No time to recover, no moment to breathe. He was plunged into a brutal, close-quarters melee. Every punch landed with bone-jarring impact, every block a desperate gamble. The operatives moved with ruthless efficiency, a faceless blur of trained killers, their intent chillingly clear, to overwhelm, to break, to extinguish. Jax fought with the desperate ferocity of a cornered animal, his skills pushed beyond their known limits, revealing the sheer, unforgiving ruthlessness of the world he inhabited, a world where even refuge offered no escape. Far from the brutal echoes of his fight, a different kind of darkness settled over Lily. Her nightmares, once vague and fleeting, now clung to her like a shroud, casting long shadows into her waking hours. Anna, her face etched with a silent, growing anxiety, watched as Lily retreated, isolating herself with crayons and paper. The innocence of childhood art twisted into disturbing visions. Shadowy figures with elongated limbs, a man whose face was always hidden, his outline both familiar and terrifying. Each hurried stroke of crayon was a subconscious plea, a silent scream for protection against an unseen dread that Anna, despite her unwavering love, struggled desperately to comprehend. A mother's heart breaking for a fear she couldn't name or fight. Battered, bruised, and bleeding, Jax knew. His digital trap, his carefully constructed veil of anonymity, had not been enough. The veil was closing in faster, more relentlessly than he had ever anticipated. Their relentless pursuit a cold reminder of the impossible odds. He stared at the worn photograph of Anna and Lily, their smiling faces a searing wound and a fierce resolve in his chest. He could no longer hide. He had to abandon the shadows, shed the ghost, and draw them out into the open. A desperate, physical confrontation on his own terms. It was an impossible gambit, a suicidal choice, to protect them directly, to be their shield, even if it meant his own end, a final, irrevocable sacrifice. With a cold, surgical precision born of years in the shadows, Jax set his final plan in motion. His old stomping grounds, the familiar streets of his neighborhood, would become a battlefield. He moved with silent efficiency, placing tripwires, subtle pressure plates, and obscured cameras, turning ordinary streetlights into deadly beacons, converting every alleyway into a potential choke point. Diversions were meticulously planted, designed to disorient, to delay, to funnel the veil exactly where he wanted them. He monitored their relentless advance, a spider watching flies caught in its web, anticipating their strike, aiming to intercept them, to absorb their full force before they could ever set foot near the only light he had left. Every nerve ending was alive, every sense attuned to the approaching storm. An icy tendril of dread had begun to coil around Anna's heart. An inexplicable feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes upon them, pushed her to a decision. She would take Lily to a friend's house, just for the night. As she began to pack a small bag, flicker on her tablet screen caught her eye. Her home security system, usually a reassuring presence, displayed a series of updates. Cameras inexplicably disabled, perimeter sensors tripped with no discernible cause. Her breath hitched. The screen's sterile white glow reflected the dawning horror in her eyes. It wasn't paranoia, it wasn't a nightmare. The danger, a palpable, suffocating presence, was real. It was here, at their doorstep, and she was utterly, terrifyingly alone. The ghost, Thorne's most efficient blade, received the updated orders with a curt nod. Her tactical team moved with a silent, disciplined precision that spoke of relentless training and singular purpose. They glided through the pre-dawn streets, shadows within shadows, converging on Anna and Lily's house. Each operative was a perfectly tuned instrument of war, anticipating every counter-move, every defensive measure Jax might have deployed. Yet, even the ghost, for all her lethal acumen, remained blissfully unaware of the true extent of Jax's preparations, of the deadly symphony of traps and diversions he had orchestrated. The first hint of dawn, a fragile, hopeful blush of orange and purple, began to paint the sky, marking the silent, inevitable approach of the coming storm. The city barely stirred, yet the night's final, desperate act was already unfolding. Jax moved like a whisper, a shadow among shadows, orchestrating a ballet of destruction against his pursuers. The Veil's advance team, relentless but reckless, stumbled into his first cold embrace. A barely visible tripwire, a silent hum of displacement, then a blinding flashbang detonated, ripping through the oppressive pre-dawn fog. Disorientation seized them, a symphony of shouts and dropped weapons. In that precious, chaotic window, Jax was a phantom. 2 operatives, momentarily helpless, were dispatched with brutal, efficient grace. No wasted movement, just lethal precision. Each takedown a chilling reminder of the man he had been forced to become. Each life taken a heavy toll, but a necessary sacrifice to clear the path for the only lives that mattered. Miles away, Anna pushed the engine. Lily a terrified, silent presence in the back. Hope, a fragile thing, flickered with every turn. But the veil had eyes everywhere. Headlights flared in her rear view, then suddenly, from every direction, dark SUVs like predatory beasts boxed her in. The world shrunk to the confines of her windshield, her breath catching in her throat as armed operatives spilled out, weapons raised, their faces grim under tactical gear. This was it. Despair threatened to drown her. Then, a sudden, concussive blast from a nearby alleyway. A brilliant, distracting explosion. It was him, Jax. A desperate, calculated diversion. Sacrificing his anonymity in the city's dying dark. Buying them a precious, fleeting second. A chance. He would break every rule to save them. The momentary reprieve Anna felt was a cruel illusion. The ghost, a strategist of cold, calculating precision, had already anticipated Jax's every move, every sacrifice. She didn't chase. She predicted. Anna, heart-pounding, swerved onto a quiet, tree-lined street, the promised escape route. But the street was anything but clear. A sleek, black vehicle, menacing and unmoving, sat perfectly positioned, blocking their path. No sirens, no flashing lights, just an ominous silence. Hope, once so vibrant, shriveled and died in Anna's chest. The realization hit like a physical blow. They hadn't escaped the trap. They'd merely run into the next, more inescapable one. They were caught, trapped between a ghost and the dawn. Jax, abandoning all caution, surged forward, a primal scream building in his chest. His diversion had worked, but only for a moment. He saw them then, Anna and Lily cornered helpless, and standing over them, the architect of their suffering, the ghost. A guttural roar tore from Jax as he launched himself into a furious assault. This wasn't strategy. It was pure, unadulterated paternal rage. Their fight was a blur of devastating blows and brutal counterattacks, 2 equally skilled warriors driven by opposing forces, one by a father's protective instinct, the other by a cold, unyielding mission. Every impact echoed with the weight of years, of secrets, of lives torn apart. This was the clash of his past and his desperate future. The brutal dance continued, a desperate struggle between 2 forces of nature. But as the pale light of dawn finally, reluctantly, broke through the lingering shadows, a new reality began to emerge. Amidst the chaos of their fight, Anna, still shielding Lily, finally saw him. Not the silhouette, not the myth, but the man. The lines of his jaw, the depth of his eyes, etched with years of pain and sacrifice. The truth, sharper than any blade, cut through her. Her dead husband, her protector watching from the shadows all this time. Shock, betrayal, and an overwhelming, heart-wrenching relief crashed over her in a single, devastating wave. Lily, now seeing her shadow man in the light, her tiny hand reached out, hesitant, towards the father she never knew. The ghost, seizing a momentary advantage, recovered with lethal speed. Her weapon, glinting in the pale dawn, rose, aimed not at Jax, but at the vulnerable child. Lily. Time seemed to slow, the world holding its breath. Without a thought, without hesitation, Jax moved. A desperate, final lunge, placing himself directly in the path of the bullet meant for his daughter. The impact was sickeningly visceral, ripping through him. He collapsed, a profound agony searing through his body, but his eyes remained fixed on Lily, on Anna. With his last, gasping strength, his hand slammed down, triggering a hidden device. A tremor, then a deafening groan. The very structure around them began to crumble, burying the ghost and the remaining operatives under a torrent of steel and concrete. He bought them freedom, at the ultimate cost. The air was thick with the acrid stench of ozone and burnt metal. Elias, battered and bleeding, pushed himself off the collapsing gantry, the explosion echoing in his ears. Silas lay sprawled below, amidst the sparking wreckage of the data core, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and defeat. The device, the very thing they'd both sworn to protect, was irrevocably destroyed, its secrets scattered to the digital wind. Elias hadn't won. He'd merely prevented Silas from claiming his twisted victory. He felt no triumph, only a hollow ache where loyalty once resided. Why Silas? The words were hoarse, ripped from a raw throat. Silas just coughed, a grotesque gurgle of blood, a final, defiant sneer twisting his lips. Some things are bigger than us, Thorne. Some truths burn the world down. With that, his eyes glazed over, the light fading. Elias watched him die, not as an enemy, but as a monument to a shattered ideal. The mission was over, but the war, the one against the shadows within their own ranks, had just begun. The data might be gone, but Elias carried the truth now. A truth that would demand a reckoning no matter the cost. He turned, limping away from the inferno, a lone figure against a hostile dawn, the weight of a dying man's last words an unbearable burden, and a chilling prophecy.